Easy treat. In today's video, we are going to break down the Logic session for this track. Today's breakdown is brought to you by DistroKid. They're my music distributor. They're the guys that got this track onto all of the major platforms. And they do that at a price an independent artist can easily afford. If you want to get your music out there in the same way, check the description below this video today for a discount off of your first year of unlimited distribution. Let's get into it. Everything all in is a mere 28 channels, which, you know, is wonderful. But each of those 28 channels does its own job. Now, the most part, the breaks take up what? I think 11 tracks, and then we've got some extra layers with percussion and bits. So if I actually drop this down here, this is just the drum break itself. And what it is a chopped up break and some samples layered in with the I think break. Yeah, the Lynn Collins break. So Lynn Collins just sounds like this. You know, hardly processed, chopped up, super raw, but it's just in there to add a little bit of character, and then all the chopped up break comes together like this. You can just hear the echoes of Think in there, right? And that's what I really liked about it. Then we've got my signature snare called My Sharp Snare, which I use a lot because it just cuts through every single time. I made it years ago for lessons learned using FM8. It's not an exciting sound, is it? But it cuts through. Get rid of it. It adds to the break, and that's what's critical about it. And then we've got this little guy here. The most ingenious shaker you could ever imagine. It's literally just like a MIDI loop thrown into quick sampler here, just with a little shaker and a little fade off look. That's literally it. But again, it adds to the vibe. You can tell even by the MIDI there that it's not particularly exactly on. So it gives that little kind of shake and feel, right? In the main section, that's all of our drums. It changes a little bit in the like hooky type part where we've got this extra little guy added in. Just a little reverse shaker there, which, you know, it goes hand in hand with this alternate version here of a ride. There's two ride patterns that switch up, so that has a little change. You can just hear how those shake together. Snare carries on doing its thing, break carries on doing its thing. And they switch up when the vocal switches up. Now, for the most part, it's all built upon this sample here called, well, it's just called Soul Chops. I don't remember where it's from. And that gives me the fundamentals of the track in, it's the guitar line, basically. It's chopped up guitar and soul samples. Now, I've then got a sub version of that where I've made that. There will be a separate video linked at the end of this one which shows you exactly how I make these sub variants of samples. So that gives us all that extra weight, right? And then there's a MIDI bass line that I've done underneath that. Just it's with the standard Liverpool bass in Logic, just called the B line, and that just adds an extra little melody in there, and it should work well when the sample's just in. And why do that, you ask? Well, you know, I've kind of relied heavily on laying on top of this sample. I want to have something of my own in there that I've made. I don't just want to chop up samples. The idea of sampling is to get like a fundamental feel and bring that in and be creative with it. And my way of being creative with it in this tune was to write this. It's not, I mean, it is a bass line, but it's actually its kind of own melody line. And, you know, it works with the subline as well. Subline just reinforcing it, and then the soul chops, yeah, they all sit together. And for me, really, the idea is you would hear that and you wouldn't know that it's actually 3 separate parts. It sounds like it should all be one. That's how it was originally, right? That's what I wanted to go for. Then the breaks sit on top of it. And we got a good vibe going, right? And that's the fundamentals of the track, right? That builds everything together right there. The only other thing that really occurs here is a crash right at the start. And then just here there's a riser, which is just a single note and just, you know, built to be a riser. If I show the automation, there you go. You can see that we've got a nice little sweep up and then a nice little bump in the resonance, and that just builds this for us. Nothing particularly special, just a little signature sound to go, hey, we're moving into that chorus section now. And automation wise, there's not much else going on. There's a bit in the Liverpool bass lifting it up right at the start. There's some going on the vocals, and the drums has got a whole load of bits going on here at the start. Look. Alright, just to give us that build in. What else have we got going on? The other thing here in this like little, I'm going to call this the intro, because really this is like your mix-in portion. It's just a short version of the main section to mix into, and then really this 16 here is the intro. And we've got some separate drums here, playing around with those rides, giving us a bit of a rhythm, and it builds up and gets more complex as it comes to the start of the track. Yeah, just getting harder and faster and just building up in the momentum. And that sits on top of some samples that I only used in the breakdown parts, which are just here. Again, we've got some soul chops. This one here, I'm pretty sure is from Splice, so you can probably search that and find it. And then below it, I've got another layer of it to get a different vibe with it. So it's like so. And like that. So together it gets this really wide feeling. Threw some Latin percussion underneath it. Just another little shaky loop. That all helps it build up. It also gives us a break from this sample here, but it moves into it quite nicely. Happy days, right? So it kind of establishes the tune. We've already landed on our main sample. We've heard that right at the start. We've given all that build-up element, and we've given away all of the elements apart from the vocal. And the vocal starts coming in here with some of the introduction. So we've got. And we've like established all of that, and then we go into the main section where it all drops in together. The only other surprise we've now got left to reveal is what's essentially the hook section, and we used our little sweep before to move into that. We've just got a different version of guitar chops here. So the only like other little flary things we've done is I've made like a independent crash here. So I've layered the crashes up because I just want it to be a little bit different, more impactful here. So that's ever so slightly different. And there's some things that I did with the drum breaks in a couple of parts, like here. And a bit here where I just went to like the really old school break sound just for a second, just as like a nice little throwback.
Also, are you down with me?
Yeah, just a little throwback to the heritage of it, right? And construction wise, that's basically it for the tune. That puts everything together. It's a nice little poppy liquid DnB tune. I didn't want to overuse things, so you'll see like the little breakdown and Latin perk disappears after that time. It never happens again. And yeah, things are just chopped and moved around in different ways, you know, fading everything out at the end. Snare goes away. Fade the break out, you know. In next week's video, what we'll do, we'll look at some of the mixing techniques I used in this track as well, so don't forget to subscribe for that. And if you really want to learn how I do that sub line by taking samples and building its own sub separate from everything else with it, watch the video that is on screen now, because it is an entire breakdown of exactly how I do that process. Thank you very much for watching. I do look forward to seeing you in that video. Take care.